My brother stood in my kitchen, in my apartment that I pay for, and said, "I used your name on the lease. It's not like you were using your credit for anything anyway." He said it the way you'd say you borrowed someone's pen. No pause, no apology, just the flat confidence of someone who had never once been told no and believed that to be a permanent condition. My mother, sitting at my table with her hands wrapped around a mug of my coffee, nodded slowly. "She'll understand. She always does." I didn't say a word. I walked to the window, looked out at the parking lot below, and let the silence do what I couldn't. 3 days later, the property management company's attorney sent a certified letter to my address. By the time my brother figured out what I'd done, it was too late to undo any of it. Before I get into the full story, hit like and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. If you've ever been the responsible one in your family, the one everyone leans on until you bend, I want to hear from you. You're not alone in this. My name is Waverly. I'm 31 years old, and for most of my life, I have been described by the people who love me as patient, steady, the one who doesn't make a fuss. My aunt used to say I came out of the womb already apologizing for taking up space, and I laughed every time she said it because I didn't know yet that she was right. I grew up in a small city in Ohio, youngest of 2, raised by parents who loved us both. I do believe that, but who loved us very differently. My brother Colt is 5 years older than me, and from the time I can remember, he moved through the world as though it were designed specifically for his convenience. Not maliciously, not at first, just with a kind of careless certainty that things would work out, that someone would catch him, that the bill would always, eventually, land somewhere else. I was that somewhere else more times than I can count. There's a particular silence that lives inside families like ours. Not hostile, not cold, just accommodating. The kind where nobody says the difficult thing because saying it would require acknowledging the pattern, and acknowledging the pattern would mean deciding what to do about it. So instead you absorb. You adjust. You tell yourself it's fine, it's family, it's not worth the argument. I told myself that for 26 years. I moved to Charlotte 3 years ago for a position at a regional accounting firm. Nothing glamorous, but mine. I built my credit carefully, the kind of careful that comes from watching your parents struggle with debt your whole childhood, from deciding at 19 that you would never live like that. By my late 20s, I had a credit score I was genuinely proud of, a small savings account, and a 1-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood I'd chosen, because it was quiet and the grocery store was walkable. It wasn't much, but every inch of it was something I had assembled myself. Colt had not done the same. He called it bad luck, and maybe some of it was. A job that fell through, a business idea that didn't pan out, a lease he'd broken in Nashville when the roommate situation went sideways. Our parents described all of it as being in a rough patch, the way you'd describe a stretch of bad weather, temporary, beyond his control, already passing. Last spring, I flew back home for my mother's birthday. We had dinner at her favorite Italian place, the same one we'd been going to since Colt and I were kids, back when the booths had red vinyl seats and the owner kept a jar of lemon drops on the host stand. The seats had been reupholstered since then. Some things do change. Colt arrived 20 minutes late with a story about traffic that didn't quite track for a Sunday afternoon in a town with 3 stoplights. He looked good, new jacket, new shoes, relaxed in the way that people who aren't carrying any weight tend to be. He talked most of the dinner, new plans, a commercial space he was looking at, a partner he was in talks with. I listened the way I always listen to Colt, with half of my attention on what he's saying and the other half quietly doing the math on whether it adds up. It didn't add up. Commercial leases require credit checks, security deposits, personal guarantees. I've handled enough small business accounts at work to know what the numbers look like when they're real versus when they're a story someone's rehearsing until they believe it themselves. I drove back to my parents' house after dinner and sat with them for a while. My mother showed me photos she'd been organizing, old ones, the kind that live in shoeboxes in bedroom closets. Colt's high school graduation. Colt's first car. Colt at the lake the summer he turned 20. I was in a few of them, at the edge, slightly turned, like I'd been included as an afterthought. I noticed that for the first time. I didn't say anything. I helped my mother put the photos back in the box, hugged them both goodnight, and drove to the hotel I'd booked, because something about staying at my old room for the weekend had started feeling less like comfort and more like regression. On the drive over, I couldn't shake the unease, the kind that sits behind your sternum and doesn't have a name yet. I found out what it was 2 months later. It was a Wednesday. I was at my desk reviewing quarterly reconciliation reports when my phone buzzed with an alert from my credit monitoring app. Hard inquiry. Commercial credit. A property management company out of Columbus. I set down my pen. I work with numbers every day. I know what a hard inquiry on commercial credit means. It means someone pulled my credit for a lease application. It means my name was on paperwork. It means someone gave authorization that I had not given. I didn't panic. Panic would have been a waste of time. I went to the small conference room at the end of the hall, closed the door, and pulled up my full credit report on my phone. It loaded line by line. And there it was, under my name, my social security number, my carefully built credit history, a commercial lease application for a retail space in Columbus. Applied 2 weeks ago. Co-applicant listed as primary, guaranteed by me. I sat there for a long moment with the phone in my hand and thought about the new jacket, the new shoes, the business partner he was in talks with. Then I called my brother. He picked up on the third ring, and his voice was easy, warm, the way it gets when he's already decided the conversation is going to go his way. "Hey, what's up? I got a credit alert," I said. "Someone pulled my credit for a commercial lease in Columbus." A brief pause, just long enough. "Oh, yeah, I was going to tell you about that." "Tell me about what exactly?" "I needed a cosigner. My credit's still kind of a mess from the Nashville thing, and the landlord wanted someone with a solid history. I used your information. I figured you wouldn't mind, your score is great." I set my hand flat on the conference table. "Colt, you used my information without asking me. You were busy. I didn't want to bother you with the details while I was still figuring it out. That's fraud." He laughed. It wasn't a cruel laugh. That was almost the worst part. It was a dismissive one, the kind you use with someone who's overreacting. "It's paperwork, Wave. I'll handle the payments. You won't even know it's there." I didn't respond. I heard movement on his end, and then my mother's voice in the background. She was there, at whatever apartment or sublet or in-between place he was living at the time. "Is that Waverly? Is everything okay?" Colt said. "She's a little upset about the lease thing." My mother came on the phone. "Honey, he just needs a little support right now. You know how he's been struggling." "Mom, he put my name on a legal document without my consent. It's family. You're not going to get into legal trouble over family, are you?" I pulled the phone away from my ear. Not because I was angry, though I was. Because I needed a second to make sure I understood what was happening clearly, without the fog of wanting her to be different from who she is. When I brought the phone back, I said, "I'll call you later." And I hung up. I sat in that conference room for another 10 minutes. The building hummed around me. Printers, HVAC, distant conversation, ordinary Wednesday sounds. I looked at my hands on the table and thought about what this meant for my credit, for my rental history, for my professional reputation, which in my field is everything. A judgment against a commercial lease tied to my name could follow me for years. It could affect my ability to apply for a mortgage. It could surface in a background check. Colt had handed me a liability I never agreed to carry, and my mother had called it support. I opened a new folder on my phone and started documenting. That's the thing about my work. The skills don't stay at the office. I know how to build a paper trail. I know what evidence looks like when it's organized versus when it's scattered. I screenshot the credit alert. I downloaded my full credit report and saved it. I searched the property management company's name and pulled the public listing for the commercial space in Columbus. I found Colt's social media and screenshotted 3 posts from the past month. One announcing his new venture, one tagging the neighborhood where the space was located, and one showing him standing in front of what appeared to be the storefront with a caption about new beginnings. I did all of this calmly. Not because I wasn't upset, but because upset without documentation is just noise. And I was done making noise that nobody listened to. Over the next few days, I contacted the property management company directly. I explained that I had not authorized the use of my information and requested a copy of the application. They were cooperative, more than I expected. These situations, it turned out, were not as rare as I'd hoped. The application had my name, my social security number, my employer, my income. The income figure was correct. The signature on the personal guarantee line was not mine. Too quick, too casual, the kind of forgery that assumes it will never be examined. I examined it. I called the property management company's legal office and filed a formal dispute. I contacted my state's Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division and submitted a report. I called my own attorney, a woman I'd used once before for a contract review, and she walked me through my options in a single 60-minute consultation that was worth every cent. She confirmed what I already knew: unauthorized use of someone's identity on a financial document is fraud. It doesn't matter if the person who did it is your brother. It doesn't matter if your mother thinks it's just paperwork. The law is not interested in family dynamics. My attorney sent a formal letter to Colt within the week. I didn't warn him it was coming. There was no version of that conversation that would have ended well, and I had learned by then that the people who dismiss the harm they cause do not suddenly develop accountability when you explain it to them gently. They need to feel it arrive. It arrived on a Thursday. I know because my mother called me at 7:48 in the morning, which told me Colt had called her first. "What did you do?" Her voice was tight in a way I'd rarely heard. "There's a lawyer involved now. Waverly, this is your brother. I know who he is. You're going to destroy his chance at this business. This is the first real thing he's tried to do in years." I walked to my kitchen window with the phone against my ear. Outside, 2 kids were riding bikes on the sidewalk, weaving around each other, easy and uncomplicated. "Mom," I said, "he forged my signature on a legal document. He didn't ask me. He didn't warn me. He just used my name because he assumed I would absorb it. He was going to tell you." "When? After the first late payment hit my credit? After the lease went to collections?" She went quiet. I could hear her breathing. "I have spent my entire life being the soft place everyone lands," I said. "I am not doing it anymore." The drive to Columbus was 3 hours. I made it the following Saturday, not because anyone asked me to, but because I knew there would be a reckoning and I wanted to be standing on my own feet when it happened. My parents live in a house that looks friendlier than it is. White siding, black shutters, a wind chime on the porch that my mother bought at a craft fair when Colt and I were teenagers. Inside, everything is familiar. The smell of the candle she burns in the kitchen, the particular creak of the second porch step, the arrangement of family photos in the hallway. I've walked that hallway 10,000 times. Colt's photos take up most of it. My father was in the living room when I arrived. He didn't stand when I came in. He just looked at me from the armchair like I was something he was trying to solve. "You couldn't have come to us first," he said, "before getting lawyers involved." "I came to you," I said. "Mom told me it was family. That I shouldn't make it legal, because it didn't need to be legal. We could have sorted it out." "How?" As I sat down across from him, not to be confrontational, but because I was tired of standing in doorways in this house. What was the plan? He would pay the lease himself. With what income? On what timeline? While my name sat on a guarantee I never signed. My father's jaw moved. He's not a bad man. I want to be clear about that. He's someone who loves his son in a way that has always required someone else to pay the cost, and who never had to reckon with that because I was always there to pay it. Colt came in from the kitchen. He looked less relaxed than the last time I'd seen him. The easy confidence was still there, but thinner now, like a coat worn in weather it wasn't made for. "You really did this," he said. "It wasn't quite a question. You really did this," I said back quietly. "I just responded. I was going to tell you." I needed the space fast. The landlord had another applicant. "Stop." I wasn't unkind. I was just done. "You did not use my information because you ran out of time. You used it because you knew if you asked me, I might say no. And you've never had to accept no from me before, so you decided not to give me the chance." He opened his mouth, closed it. My mother came in from the hallway, her hands twisted together the way they get when she's distressed. "Waverly, he could face charges." "I know. He's your brother." "I know that too." I looked at her. She looked smaller than I remembered, or maybe I was just seeing her differently. "Mom, every time I've done something like this, you've asked me to absorb it. The time he borrowed money he never paid back. The time he told his landlord I'd vouch for him without asking me. The time he gave your bank information to someone for a business deal and you asked me to help you manage the overdraft. Every single time, the solution was me. And every single time, I did it. And he never once had to feel the weight of what he'd done because it never landed on him." She pressed her hand to her mouth. "I'm not doing it anymore," I said. "Not because I don't love him, but because the way this family has been running is not love. It's just borrowing from me until there's nothing left." My father looked at the floor. For the first time in my life, he had nothing to say. The formal process moved faster than I expected. The property management company, once they had my documentation and my attorney's letter, initiated their own review. The lease was voided and reissued without my name. The personal guarantee was invalidated. My credit file was flagged for the fraudulent inquiry, and I was able to submit a formal dispute that the credit bureau processed within 30 days. My score took a temporary dip from the inquiry, but recovered fully. Colt was required to reapply for the space with only his own credit, which, as I'd suspected, did not meet the threshold. The business did not move forward, not because of me. He simply didn't have the financial standing to support it on his own. He'd been planning to use me as the foundation of something I'd never agreed to build. My mother called twice that week. I let both calls go to voicemail, not out of cruelty. I just needed the space to breathe without her worry finding a way to become my responsibility. 2 weeks later, I got a text from my brother. It was short. It said, "I know I messed up. I don't expect anything from you." I read it 3 times. I didn't respond right away. There was no version of a reply that felt right yet, and I've learned to trust that feeling. When the words are ready, they'll come. Forcing them just produces the kind of language that sounds like resolution without being one. What I know is this: the person who committed fraud against me was my brother. The people who told me to absorb it were my parents. And the person who finally stopped absorbing was me. At work the following month, my supervisor mentioned she was expanding our forensic accounting team and asked if I'd be interested in leading the client intake process. First point of contact for potential fraud cases, the person who decides whether there's enough to pursue. She said she'd been watching how I handle the cases that require patience, how I don't rush to conclusions, how I build things that hold up. I said yes without hesitating. Because here's what I've figured out. After 31 years of being the steady one, the patient one, the one who doesn't make a fuss, being quiet is not the same as having nothing to say, and being the person who absorbs is not the same as being strong. Real strength is knowing the difference between holding something together and just holding something until it breaks you. My brother needed someone to stop letting him fall forward onto other people. My parents needed someone to stop making it easy to look the other way. I was the only person in a position to be that someone, not because I owed it to them, but because I finally owed it to myself. If you've ever had to stop being someone's safety net to finally let the weight fall where it belongs, tell me about it in the comments. I want to know how you knew when you'd reached your limit. And if you're still carrying something that isn't yours, I hope this helps you put it down. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next.